Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is TVP World. You're watching World News. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee, and these are the latest headlines. Polish Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski, speaking at the Big Five meeting in Madrid, said Ukraine, not Russia, has the right to decide if it wants foreign troops on its territory. Sikorski also emphasized the need to establish a ceasefire deadline. Sonia Agata-Bishchan reports from Madrid.
Polish Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski was in Madrid to meet with his counterparts. The overarching topics of the discussion included strengthening European security and enhancing assistance to Ukraine. Sikorski indicated that this meeting was an extension of the Weimar Triangle meeting held in Warsaw last year. On Monday, it included representatives from 7 countries as well as the EU top diplomat Kaja Kallas, who reflected on peace talks and Europe's next steps in that respect.
Russia is playing games and not really wanting peace. So our question is, how can we put more pressure on Russia?
Sikorski noted that the closer the countries are to Russia, the more likely they are to invest in defense. At the same time, he welcomed the expansion of what used to be the Weimar Triangle, as he said that this indicates that countries understand that Russia is a real threat not only to the Eastern Flank, but to Europe as a whole.
Russia is not only bombing in Ukraine, it is conducting a hybrid war against all of us. Here in Spain, there is disinformation, there are attempts at political manipulation, but in many countries we also have other elements of hybrid war just below the threshold of kinetic action.
This meeting was hosted by Spain, which invests approximately 1.3% of its GDP in defense, considerably less compared to Poland's 4.7% of its GDP planned for 2025. Nonetheless, this is the very reason why Spain wanted to host this meeting, to show that despite a more modest defense expenditure, it still takes security very seriously. From Madrid, for TVP World, I'm Sonia Agata-Bishchan.
TVP World asked Polish Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski whether nuclear deterrence is part of the recently announced Polish-French security treaty. The bilateral agreement reportedly includes mutual security guarantees between Warsaw and Paris.
Sonia Agata-Bishchan, TVP World. I have a question regarding the Polish-French treaty on security that was recently announced. Can we expect a provision on nuclear deterrence and alternatively, are there any developments in plan?
I don't recall any references to nuclear matters in the text that I've seen so far.
And can we expect any developments in that regard?
I think these things are better discussed in private, not in public. Thank you.
Poland, Sweden, and the UK are launching their air policing mission from the Polish city of Malbork. British and Swedish fighter jets have been deployed to Poland to patrol NATO's eastern flank. Malbork in northern Poland is home to the 22nd Air Base of the Polish Armed Forces. Now it hosts British Typhoon fighters and Swedish Gripen jets. Today, the latest tour of duty in the enhanced air policing mission in Malbork is being officially inaugurated by the Ministers of Defense of Poland and Sweden, as well as representatives from the UK. The mission marks the first deployment of the Swedish Air Force's combat aircraft since Stockholm joined NATO last year. The alliance's enhanced air policing mission was introduced in 2014 after Russia's illegal annexation of Crimea, aiming to serve as a deterrent. Poland's prime minister has appealed to the U.S. president, saying cooperation is better than confrontation. This came after Poland signed a $2 billion contract with the United States on Tuesday for logistical support for the Patriot missile defense systems. Zuzana Jurek has this report.
US and Polish officials signed the second phase of the agreement for the training and logistical support of the Patriot batteries.
To us, security, Polish-American cooperation and the stability of NATO are not abstract ideas. They are important issues, and we demonstrate our commitment to these issues by investing billions of euro in our security. We have shown unwavering commitment to our alliance partnerships, particularly in recent months, and our track record speaks for itself. Regardless of political turmoil, Poland will continue to be a reliable and committed partner in the region, upholding its commitments and fostering stability.
This agreement is phase 2 of the Vistula program, which aims to strengthen and revitalize Poland's air defense systems.
A key component of this agreement are the simulators, which will allow our soldiers, the best soldiers in the Polish armed forces and specialists in air defense, to train their responses to simulated attacks in order to achieve full operational readiness.
This agreement will also allow Poland to reach full operational readiness of the Patriot batteries. Back in February 2024, Poland was one of the first countries, just after the U.S., to employ the Integrated Air and Missile Defense and Battle Command Systems, or IBCSs, the most advanced and sophisticated systems currently available. Outside of the US, Poland is the only US ally which has access to these systems, which are said to be fully integrated into the Patriot batteries by 2031. For TVP World, Zuzanna Jurek.
Russia did not launch any drone strikes on Ukraine from Monday night to Tuesday morning, a rear break from its usual tactics. This has sparked speculation over whether it's a response to recent criticism from Donald Trump directed at Vladimir Putin. The Ukrainian Air Force confirmed that Russia targeted the Zaporizhia region in southeastern Ukraine with 2 cruise missiles, both of which were shot down. Ukrainian news outlet Ukrainska Pravda speculated that the lull in drone strikes could be linked to recent remarks by U.S. President Donald Trump, in which he expressed frustration with Vladimir Putin, criticizing his challenge of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's legitimacy. Trump also threatened secondary sanctions on Russian oil if the conflict fails to reach a ceasefire. Andrei Kolevenko, head of Ukraine's Center for Counteracting Disinformation, said, however, that this pause may not necessarily indicate a shift in Russian tactics. Leaders of Ukraine and the United Kingdom have agreed that there is momentum to support Ukraine's long-term security. Keir Starmer and President Zelensky discuss efforts to find a just resolution to the war during a phone call. The British Prime Minister told the Ukrainian president that an upcoming summit involving UK, French and Ukrainian military leaders will, quote, drive forward the next stage of detailed planning for securing lasting peace in Ukraine. The summit is scheduled to take place in the coming days. Starmer and Zelensky also reviewed their recent efforts, including last week's coalition meeting in Paris aimed at coordinating support for Ukraine. U.S. State Department spokesperson Tammy Bruce says Vladimir Putin's calls to establish a temporary government in Ukraine were, quote, not appreciated by the U.S. president. Her remarks came just a day after Trump expressed anger over Putin's additional demands concerning Zelensky's presidency.
We do know that I think there was an idea from Russia about a temporary administration that was not appreciated by the president. Ukraine, I don't think I need to remind everyone, but it's a good reminder, is a constitutional democracy. Governance in Ukraine is determined by its constitution and the Ukrainian people. We are committed to the diplomacy necessary to achieve a full ceasefire and to bring the parties to the negotiating table for a final and lasting settlement. President Trump has made clear that Russia and Ukraine need to move to a full ceasefire now. None of that has changed.
Danish officials have announced that they are set to meet U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio this week. Now, this will be the first high-level talks between the two countries since President Donald Trump's re-election and his vow to, quote, take control of Greenland, which is a semi-autonomous territory of Denmark.
The news comes amid increasing tensions between the two nations over U.S. interest in the Arctic island. Reports have also surfaced that Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen is set to hold talks with the new government of the semi-autonomous territory. The meeting between US and Danish authorities is planned for the sidelines of the NATO Foreign Ministers Summit in Brussels on Thursday. Officials, however, have warned that the event could be cancelled because of tense relations between Copenhagen and Washington, D.C.
Marine Le Pen, the leader of France's far-right National Rally Party, has called her conviction for embezzlement a political decision and vowed to fight her way back into the French presidential race.
The judges also handed Le Pen a 4-year prison sentence, of which 2 years are suspended, and a €100,000 fine. Le Pen has been the frontrunner in opinion polls for the 2027 vote. The French far-right leader has been convicted of embezzlement and slapped with an immediate 5-year ban from serving in public office. This bars Le Pen from running in the 2027 presidential race, unless she successfully appeals the verdict. She confirmed she would appeal the decision, claiming innocence, and added that if the Monday's ruling is successfully overturned in time, she will return to the presidential race. Le Pen and 24 members of her National Rally Party were accused of diverting more than €4 million of European Parliament funds to pay France-based staff.
What the judge is doing here is saying, I am going to make you ineligible straight away, and I'm doing it precisely to stop you from being able to be elected president. If that's not a political decision, I don't know what it is. There are millions of French people who are indignant to an unimaginable extent when they see that in France, the country of human rights, judges have put in place practices which we thought were reserved for authoritarian regimes. What a dark day this is for our democracy and our country, where millions of French people will be deprived by a judge in an initial trial, not an appeals court, without any recourse possible, of the candidate who is considered the favorite for the presidential election. That should scandalize anyone who truly cares about democracy and the rule of law.
The Armenian government has refused to pay its contribution to the Moscow-led Collective Security Treaty Organization for the past year. This move is the latest in a series of steps by Yerevan to distance itself from the Russian-led alliance.
Earlier this year, Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan announced the country had suspended its participation in CSTO at all levels. Back in May 2024, the government in Yerevan said it would stop paying into the alliance's joint coffers. Armenia has so far had a close relationship with Russia due to its primary foe in the region, Azerbaijan. But officials in Yerevan have largely refrained from getting involved in Russia's full-scale war in Ukraine. The situation changed after Russian so-called peacekeepers failed to prevent Azerbaijan's offensive into the contested Nagorno-Karabakh region. Disappointed in the Kremlin and fearing a new wave of hostilities with Azerbaijan, Armenian authorities have turned to the West for new partnerships.
Anti-government protesters took to the streets of Tbilisi to mark the anniversary of the 1991 referendum that led to Georgia's independence from the Soviet Union. The historic poll, in which over 99% of Georgians voted in favor of independence, ultimately led to the declaration of the country's sovereignty just 9 days later.
The protests included at least 2 separate marches. One began at Tbilisi State University, while the other set off from Republic Square. The 2 groups met at the Parliament building, where they continued to voice their demands. Among the protesters was former President Salome Zurabishvili, who has publicly supported the demonstrations. She addressed the crowd in front of Parliament, reiterating calls for fresh elections and the release of those arrested during the government's crackdown on dissent.
China has announced military drills to be held in the waters and airspace close to Taiwan in what authorities in Beijing called a severe warning to the self-governing island. In response, Taiwan deployed warships and put its missile systems on high alert. A spokesperson for the Chinese People's Liberation Army called the drills, which are said to involve air, sea, and missile forces, a forceful containment against Taiwan independence. Moreover, China's Coast Guard labeled the exercise as a law enforcement patrol. So far, Taiwan's Ministry of Defense has tracked some 19 Chinese vessels in the area, including the Shandong aircraft carrier, which entered Taiwan's air defense zone. China views Taiwan as part of its territory and so far has not ruled out force to bring it under Beijing's control. At the same time, most Taiwanese favor the de facto independence of the island. And with that, we conclude this edition of World News. But for more news, update, and commentary, please stay tuned to TVP World.